Hi, this is Marshall Wright with Decker Wright Corporation, and today I'm going to make a presentation that I made for the Monmouth Ocean Development Council recently about cybersecurity in 2017. When you start to think about cybersecurity, you really think about different kinds of defenses that we put up to try and keep the bad guys out. So if you look at the illustration I have, you can kind of get a visual for what we talk about in cybersecurity, where we have different barriers at different levels of the technology stack to keep the bad guys out. So in this case, we have an outside fence, we have a middle fence, we have an interior fence, and we have a guard tower where the guards are routinely watching and keeping track of what's going on. Unfortunately, as we build these security structures and these security systems, the bad guys are able to take pictures of these security systems, and they're able to replicate them and figure out ways to get around them. So we have an ongoing challenge of how we structure our defenses, how we mask those defenses, and how we keep the bad guys out. So with that illustration of how cybersecurity works as a multi-layer approach, we'll move forward, and I'll talk about some of those layers now. The first and foremost important area that every employer has to really work on is awareness and employee training. Your first and last line of defense against cyber attacks is your employees. If they're suspicious and they don't make that last click to activate the evil software, then you're protected. If they do make the click, then you could be compromised. So employee training and awareness of the cyber threats is really critically important. Strong passwords, this is something that people have talked about for years, is more and more important, and I'll describe why later. Combine that with two-part authentication. That's typically sent to your cell phone. That's what you should be moving towards with all of your accounts, strong passwords with two-part authentication. Restrict permissions. Employees should only have access to what they need to have access to, nothing more. If they have access to everything and everybody has access to everything, if one employee gets compromised, everything gets compromised. So restricting permissions and keeping people into the areas that they need to get to and not into other areas is critically important for cybersecurity. Email spam filtering. Most viruses are spread today by email. So having a good spam filtering solution in place that screens out the emails and keeps the spam and the evil viruses out is critically important. Using the built-in spam filters from Microsoft and other vendors is not advised. You should get a good, strong third-party spam filtering solution like Proofpoint. Antivirus software and second opinion virus scanning software, absolute necessity. If you do get compromised, this is how you're going to clean your system up. They also have various layers of defenses on the computers that help to prevent viruses from installing themselves and infecting your computers. And the value of the second opinion scanner is if the primary virus tool misses it, the second opinion scanner uses different logic and heuristics to look for bad things, and often will find things that the first scanner misses. Firewalls. Firewalls are important not just to protect you from the outside, but also to help manage what your employees can access. So firewalls can have restrictive rules. What's allowed in can be very limited. You can also limit what employees are able to do outbound through things like content filters where they are unable to access websites you don't want them to go to. Unified threat management is a concept that includes intrusion prevention, gateway antivirus, and gateway spyware protection, where we'll scan things that are coming into the network looking for evil that it will stop on the way in. Log file analysis is another area that's important. The log files will get reviewed, and if suspicious activity is observed in the log files, an alert is generated for somebody to follow up and check it out. And last but not least, as part of your security defense, you really have to have a good backup and recovery system, because if you do get compromised, especially with a ransomware type virus, you either recover from backups or you pay a ransom. So what I'm going to talk about today specifically are the most common threats we see, which are ransomware threats. Everyone's heard about the WannaCry virus. The Petya is another variant of that. All of these various viruses encrypt your systems and ask for ransoms. Uh, Most of that is because of the large amounts of money the criminals are making with it. In fact, industry experts estimate that the ransomware industry, if you want to think of it that way, is a billion-dollar industry. So from zero to $1 billion in less than 3 years, very, very profitable business. So the bad guys have the funds to build the defenses so they can test their evil software against it. I get that question commonly from our clients. Well, how did they get by? Well, they got by because they built the defenses and figured out how to get by. One of the most common ways they use to get by are phishing attacks, where they will send carefully crafted emails to exploit each of the users. For example, the DNC operative that was compromised during the election was compromised through a phishing email attack where they got him to log in with his username and password. Once they had that, they were able to get access to the emails. Not a very sophisticated attack, but it was very effective in this case. The best defenses against that are employee awareness, restricting permissions to make sure that employees don't have access to the areas that they shouldn't, email spam filtering, which should block it at the door, unified threat management, which will also be looking for various activity related to these phishing schemes, the antivirus software, which will scan the files when they come in and get open, and then log file analysis, which will show various activities related to these ransomware attacks. So those are phishing attacks. Brute force attacks. With a brute force attack, the bad guys find a way to access some of your data, either through things like remote desktop or websites, and they reach the login and password screen and they keep trying combinations of logins and passwords until they're successful in getting in. They have very sophisticated software that rotates through alternate logins and passwords to evade the limits that are often set for how many failed password attempts you can have. So if the password attempt cycle is 5, they'll set their software to run 4 times. And they'll run through 4 times through a list of 1,000 different combinations of logins and passwords. They actually have databases of commonly used logins and passwords that they use for this. So the defense against a brute force attack, first and foremost, are strong passwords and 2-part authentication. The next is log file analysis to analyze the log files. And another important aspect here is to restrict permissions. There's very little that unified threat management, spam filtering, or antivirus software can do if the bad guys are successful in a brute force attack. Watering holes attack are another common tactic where bad guys will compromise a website or a Facebook page, have their own hyperlinks in, and when you click on the hyperlink, going to some place that you think you want to go to, you actually wind up going to the evil software place where the software is installed and compromises your computer. Different ways that you can help prevent this are employee awareness. The unified threat management and the firewall will help prevent against this. Restricting permissions, again, is an important aspect of the defense against these types of attacks. And the antivirus software is important because that's another area where it will stop the installation of the evil software. How are the bad guys getting so good at this? Well, because they started to make money and our defenses have gotten better and better, the bad guys have started to do marketing. So they're starting to identify their different market segments. For example, healthcare is a very important market segment for them. And they will do social engineering to identify people in the healthcare industry or the vertical market they're attacking, people within the industry and positionally within the company. For example, HR and accounts payable are the 2 most attacked departments, and the reason for that is those 2 departments often receive emails with attachments from vendors. That being the case, the bad guys have carefully crafted email to attack those specific departments. The other thing that the bad guys have been able to invest in is big data. They have massive databases of usernames, logins, and email addresses that they can use to identify individuals and tailor attacks to them. For example, we've recently seen attacks where employees have received emails from their superiors saying, hey, I just finished this document, can you review it for me? Well, if you get an email like that from your boss, and you've gotten those before, you're probably going to click on that and open it, and you're immediately infected. These are becoming more and more common threats where the bad guys are using big data to reverse engineer organizations and target emails specifically to employees. They're able to do this on a large scale. It's not one or two, so if you think they're just picking on your company, you're wrong. They may send out 100,000 emails to companies like yours all across the country or all over the world. These are very sophisticated companies using high-tech marketing techniques to identify and target their people. So back in the 90s, one of my favorite programs was the X-Files. And one of the key components of the X-Files was this idea, trust no one. And that's really become the sort of the mantra of our cybersecurity and employee awareness. Trust no one, trust nothing. If you think it's not right, it probably is not right. Don't click it. Now that's all I have for this presentation today. I'm glad you took the time to watch, and keep an eye open for future presentations. Thanks. Bye.